This story is about a case that took place in Costa Rica a few years ago and has become well known in the world of forensic investigations. It is known as the case of Gerardo Cruz. Let us take you through the whole story step by step. In February 1975, a girl named Samodi Fonsec was born in Costa Rica. Not much is known about her early years or her family background. She grew up in a neighborhood called Cuba and lived with her mother, Sonia Fonsec. From a young age, Samodi stood out because of her strong personality. She went to a local school where her character traits were already apparent. She was known for being difficult and often got her way through force or manipulation. People who knew her during those years remember that she was strikingly beautiful with an almost perfect figure. Samodi used her looks to her advantage, charming many men. However, despite her ability to attract attention, she couldn't maintain long-term relationships. This was mainly due to her being overly focused on material wealth and personal gain. She was seen as vain and greedy, which pushed potential partners away after a short time. Samodi's beauty wasn't just known among her peers. During her youth, she used her doll-like appearance to work as a model, representing Barbie at a large bookstore chain called Universal. This job earned her the nickname Barbie, which stayed with her for life. Despite her looks and charm, Samodi was extremely jealous and had an aggressive streak. This part of her personality made it hard for anyone to stay with her for long. After finishing high school, she started a relationship with a well-known journalist who worked for a local TV station. This relationship marked the beginning of a series of events that would ultimately lead to a tragic and unforgettable story. The man's name was Osvaldo Fernando Baleri, and he was 16 years older than Samodi. Their relationship was the longest and most serious one Samodi had ever been in. But despite their years together, Osvaldo never proposed to her. In 1996, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Christopher. A year later, they had a daughter, Christina. However, their relationship was far from perfect. It was full of arguments, scandals, and bouts of jealousy. Because of these issues, Samodi eventually left Osvaldo in 2012. Not long after their split, Osvaldo, who was then 53 years old, died suddenly. When his will was read, Samodi found out that Osvaldo had not included her in it. Refusing to accept this, she decided to take action herself. She went to Osvaldo's house and took control of the property by changing the locks, making it impossible for his relatives and rightful heirs to enter the house. Not only did she take over the house, but Samodi also collected some valuable belongings of Osvaldo's. This move infuriated Osvaldo's family, who were shocked by her actions. They wasted no time going to court, accusing Samodi of theft and demanding that she be punished. The police intervened and made her leave the house, but no criminal charges were officially brought against her. Samodi's love life didn't end there. She had other relationships, including one with Miguel Angel Perez. From that relationship, she had a third child, a daughter named Maria. According to some reports, this relationship was officially registered, meaning they were married, but it ended in divorce after a few years. However, other sources claim that Samodi and Miguel were never married. Despite this, Samodi gave her daughter Miguel's last name without his permission or knowledge. An interesting detail is that some of Samodi's lovers mysteriously disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. But for many years, no one seemed to pay much attention to these incidents. For example, one of Samodi's boyfriends went missing shortly after he told his relatives that he was planning to break up with her, describing her as quick-tempered and aggressive. He was never found, and many people will believe Samodi was involved in his disappearance, but no solid proof could be found to confirm this. Another of her former lovers, named Diaco, met a tragic end after their relationship ended. He was murdered, and it appeared to be the result of a botched robbery. The killers were never identified or brought to justice. Once again, there were suspicions about Samodi's involvement, but no strong evidence linked her to the crime. Despite these suspicious events, Samodi's most well-known victim was a man named Gerardo Cruz. The circumstances around these incidents raised many questions and fueled rumors, but due to the lack of concrete evidence, Samodi managed to avoid legal consequences for the mysterious happenings surrounding her relationships. Cruz was born in December 1992 in San Jose, the capital of Costa Rica. He never knew his real father because he left the family before Cruz was even born. His mother, Ana Patricia, later married a man named Hermes Rodriguez. Hermes adopted Cruz, treating him as his own son and raising him with love and care. A few years later, Cruz's family grew and he gained a younger sister named Milena. Cruz's childhood and teenage years were calm and happy. He attended a regular school where he did well and spent his free time enjoying his passion for motorcycles. During this time, he met the love of his life, a girl named Carol. Their relationship blossomed early and they built a strong bond. By the age of 23, Cruz was ready to start a new chapter in his life. He, Carol, and their 4-year-old daughter, Genesis Cruz, moved into a house owned by Cruz's aunt and uncle in a suburb of San Sebastian. Determined to support his family, Cruz found work at a local bakery. He was committed to making sure they had everything they needed, working hard to provide a comfortable life. Life was good for Cruz and Carol. They were content with each other and the simple joys of family life. Soon, their happiness grew even more when they discovered that Carol was pregnant again. The news of expecting their second child brought excitement and hope to their growing family. In the summer of 2015, Gerardo met a woman named Samodi, who frequently visited the bakery where he worked. At that time, Samodi was already 40 years old, but she was still very attractive. She loved dressing in bold, fashionable outfits and enjoyed flirting with people. Despite being in her 40s, Samodi had a tendency to date men much younger than her. It seemed that the attention from younger men made her feel good about herself. Gerardo, who worked at the bakery, quickly became infatuated with Samodi. He secretly began meeting with her, and soon Samodi started visiting the bakery almost every day just to see him. This did not go unnoticed by the other workers at the bakery. On many of these visits, Samodi was often accompanied by her daughter, Christina, who was 19 years old at the time. At first, Gerardo was able to manage his family life while secretly meeting Samodi. He kept his affair hidden from his wife and daughter, ensuring that neither of the women knew about the other. However, as time passed, Gerardo started to become careless. It seemed like he wanted to show off and talk about his relationships with women. He began telling his friends and coworkers about Samodi, bragging about her being a great lover and how she spoiled him with gifts. Soon, these rumors reached Gerardo's mother. She became concerned about her son's behavior and tried to reason with him, urging him to end his affair with Samodi. However, Gerardo didn't listen to his mother's advice. The affair lasted only a few months. It ended abruptly in October 2015, when Samodi found out that Gerardo had a wife who was pregnant and a young daughter. When she discovered this, Samodi was furious. She felt betrayed and began calling and texting Gerardo, insulting him. She even threatened to harm him if he didn't leave his wife and be with her exclusively. Gerardo was able to convince his wife to forgive him and keep their family together. However, he didn't take his former mistress's threats seriously. He believed that she would quickly calm down and move on to a new boyfriend. He had no idea how dangerous and vengeful Samodi would become. A few days after his breakup with Fonsec, Cruz found himself witnessing something shocking by accident. While walking down a busy street in the city center, he saw an older man following a young girl. The man was holding his phone in such a way that the camera was positioned under the girl's miniskirt. Cruz was outraged by what he saw, so he took out his own phone and began filming the situation. He then stopped the girl and explained to her what was happening. Cruz advised her to go to the police right away. Afterwards, he decided to chase after the older man, hoping to catch his face on camera. He chased him for about 2 minutes, all the while shouting loudly about how the man was taking pictures of the girl's underwear without her knowing. Cruz asked if the man was having fun invading her privacy. Finally, the older man jumped into a cab and drove off. That same night, Gerardo posted the video he had taken on his social media page. Within hours, the video went viral. People quickly recognized the man in the video as Luis Sulmano Delgado, a former government official who had worked at the Ministry of Finance. Soon, a video that Gerardo had recorded went viral and quickly picked up by the media. His actions made him a national sensation. The young man was interviewed almost every day by newspapers, and he appeared on television and radio programs. In these interviews, he talked about the incident he had witnessed, condemned the actions of the former official involved and said he had no regrets about his decision to record the event. In fact, he said he would do the same thing again if given the chance. However, as Gerardo's fame grew, experienced lawyers working for Sulmano Delgado began to take legal action against him. They accused him of wrongdoing, arguing that by distributing the video, Gerardo had broken the law. They were preparing to file a lawsuit against him in court. Gerardo was shocked by this unexpected turn of events. He didn't understand why he was being judged for his actions when it was the former official who had committed such a horrible act against an innocent girl. Gerardo gave his last interview on October 7th, appearing on a local radio station. He was confident that he was right in what he had done, and he believed that he had nothing to fear. The very next day, Gerardo had planned to meet his friend Oswald after work, but he suddenly canceled the meeting, claiming that he had an emergency. Later, it was revealed that the emergency was a message from Samodi, a young woman who had tricked Gerardo into coming to a park that evening, where he was supposed to be interviewed again. Gerardo, not suspecting anything wrong, believed the message and went to the park to meet her. However, instead of journalists waiting for him, two unknown men were there. These men attacked Gerardo. They took his bag, beat him up, and then stabbed him multiple times in the chest and stomach before fleeing the scene. Despite his injuries and fading consciousness, Gerardo managed to call his friend and report what had happened. His friend immediately called the police and paramedics. Thanks to his quick thinking, Gerardo was rushed to the hospital where doctors worked tirelessly to save his life. Over the course of 42 days, Gerardo underwent numerous surgeries, but unfortunately, they were unable to save him, and he passed away. On November 19th, Cruz passed away in the intensive care unit. His death came after a tragic event that had captured the attention of the entire country. From the moment he was attacked, Gerardo became a real celebrity, with his condition followed closely by everyone. His family, especially his relatives, gave several interviews, asking people to pray for his recovery. They were deeply confused and upset, not understanding who could have done something so terrible to Gerardo or why. When Gerardo passed away, his funeral was attended by a large number of people who came to offer their condolences to his grieving family. Many of them also expressed hope that the police would quickly find the killers and ensure they were properly punished for their actions. At first, there were several theories about why Gerardo had been attacked. One theory suggested that it had been a robbery gone wrong. This idea made sense at first, as Gerardo had been attacked in a park in the evening. His bag was stolen, and he was stabbed, which seemed like the work of a common thief. However, a few days before the attack, Gerardo had released a shocking video that exposed compromising information about a well-known former official. This led to another theory. Perhaps it was a revenge killing. The media openly suggested that the former official, Sulmano Delgado, might have hired hitmen to silence Gerardo, who had damaged his reputation with the video. The murder was widely discussed in the media, and people took to the streets, demanding that the killers be found and brought to justice. The police began investigating all possible leads, considering different motives and looking for any enemies or ill-wishers Gerardo might have had. For months, the investigation seemed to go nowhere. But in May 2016, a breakthrough came when a street surveillance camera captured footage of two men fleeing the scene of the crime. These men quickly became the main suspects, and it was up to the police to identify them and track them down. The video was a crucial piece of evidence, and once it was shown to the public, the case began to move forward. It was broadcast repeatedly on the news, with viewers asked to watch carefully, as these men could be dangerous criminals. The police were also able to create sketches of the suspects and provide details about their appearance. Soon, the identity of one of the men was discovered because he decided to surrender to the police and cooperate with the investigation, hoping to receive a lighter sentence in exchange for his help. Thanks to the information he provided, the police were able to uncover other accomplices involved in the crime, as well as the people who had organized it. It was revealed that the crime had been planned by Samodi, who had carefully arranged every detail, even involving her daughter Christina in the plot. The two women reached out to their friends, Ronald and Caesar, to help them find hitmen to carry out the murder and make it look like a robbery gone wrong in a park at night. They were later joined by Omar, who was tasked with ensuring Gerardo went to the location where the attack would take place. Samodi personally chose the date for the murder, October 7th. On that day, she kept in contact with all the participants, giving them instructions and making sure they followed the plan. After the crime was committed, she demanded that the killers bring her something from Gerardo's belongings as proof that the murder had been carried out as planned. Through phone calls, text messages, and other evidence, the police were able to track the roles and connections of everyone involved. In the end, Samodi and her daughter Christina, along with several other men, were arrested. These included Ronald, a cab driver who had helped find the murderers, Caesar, a laborer who acted as an intermediary, and a young miner who had been directly involved in the attack. Additionally, Omar Costa, who had been following Gerardo and reporting his movements on the day of the attack, was also arrested. All of these people played a part in the tragic events, and their roles in the murder were uncovered thanks to the detailed investigation. After Cruz finished his work shift, he made his way to the park, thinking he was going there for a job interview. He was eager to make a good impression, so he was careful not to be late for the meeting. He had been told to meet at a specific spot in the park, and he was determined to arrive on time, hoping this opportunity would be a good one for him. However, when he arrived at the location where he was supposed to meet the person for the interview, things took a sudden and dangerous turn. Instead of a friendly meeting, Cruz found himself ambushed. Out of nowhere, a group of attackers surrounded him. Before he could react or defend himself, they attacked him violently. They stabbed him several times, causing serious injuries. While Cruz was struggling to understand what was happening, his attackers didn't show any mercy. They took his bag and jacket. These weren't just any items. They had been given to him by a customer earlier, as part of a bigger plan that Cruz was unaware of. The main evidence against Samodi, the woman responsible for the crime, came from text messages that were found. These messages detailed the entire murder plan, including the roles of each person involved. What made these messages even more incriminating was that Samodi didn't bother to delete them. She was so sure she wouldn't get caught that she didn't see the need to hide this evidence. The reason for committing such a horrible crime was simply jealousy. Samodi couldn't stand the idea of sharing her lover with his wife. In her mind, if he wasn't going to be with her, then no one else should have him. She planned everything carefully and even got her own daughter involved in the plot. The mother and daughter worked together to carry out the crime, and they were both immediately arrested. Since they were seen as high risk for trying to escape the country, bail was denied. The other accomplices were also taken into custody, except for Omar, who had been responsible for keeping watch. The youngest person involved was handed over to authorities that handled juvenile offenders. The investigation lasted around a year and a half, and in December 2017, the trial for everyone involved finally began. During the trial, it was revealed that Samodi had a history of criminal behavior. She had been arrested before for forging documents to claim state benefits, but she had only received a fine at that time. Additionally, it came to light that Samodi had tricked Miguel Angel Perez, the father of her youngest daughter, into paying child support for over 3 years. She had even given the child the surname of a former lover without his consent, and then used the court system to make him pay alimony. Once the fraud was discovered, Samodi was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined. However, since she had a small child, the court reduced her sentence to a suspended 5-year sentence. During the trial, it was revealed that Gerardo's wife knew about his affair with Samodi. She also admitted that Samodi had threatened to kill him, but Gerardo didn't take the threats seriously. The motive behind the murder was clear: Samodi's jealousy and wounded pride. She couldn't accept that her lover had chosen to stay with his wife over her. Phone records showed that Samodi and her daughter had planned the murder together. CCTV footage from the scene of the crime revealed the killers in action. After seeing the footage, Christine, Samodi's daughter, became very anxious and even considered confessing to the police. She called her mother in tears, but Samodi reassured her, saying that the investigation would never be able to connect them to the crime. Finally, the court reached a verdict on January 23, 2018. Samodi was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Her daughter, along with Ronald and Caesar, was sentenced to 25 years each. The youngest participant was sent to a juvenile detention center, while the second killer was never found at that time. Omar, who had been keeping watch during the murder, was acquitted. The victim's family received $140,000 as moral compensation for their loss. After the verdict, the family expressed their gratitude to the court for delivering fair punishment. However, it wasn't long before it was revealed that Samodi and Christine's lawyers had appealed to reduce their sentences. This led to a new trial in November 2019. During this trial, the identity of the second killer was revealed. Ronald admitted that the second killer was involved in the murder, but didn't know all the details of the plan. In the end, the sentences for each person involved were reduced by 5 years. Samodi's sentence was shortened to 25 years, and she is currently serving her time in a women's prison in Costa Rica. In the summer of 2020, it was reported that Samodi had married a woman she met in prison. Her wife, Lindsay Diaz Lopez, had already been released on parole, while Samodi will spend nearly 2 more decades behind bars. As the investigation continued, the truth began to surface, and all fingers pointed towards Samodi. Her jealous rage, fueled by a sense of betrayal, had spiraled out of control, leading to a tragic and fatal end. Gerardo Cruz's story serves as a heartbreaking reminder of how jealousy can destroy lives. His death left the nation grieving and asking, what if? What if Samodi had never crossed paths with Gerardo? His life could have continued, filled with love and promise. But instead, jealousy took everything. Let this story be a warning. Never let jealousy cloud your judgment.